صباح الخير. عناوين اليوم: اس تي في توقع شراكة مع ميتا، ولوسيد للسيارات، وبيمو يحصلان على تمويل جديد. يا أهلا وسهلا فيكم ببرنامجكم تك بالعربي. معكم أنا هالة بسام، ومعنا بخلف الكواليس علي. خلونا نبدأ أخبارنا لليوم ونحكي عن أول خبر معنا لليوم، تحديدا عن شراكة ما بين اس تي في وأيضا ميتا. أعلن الآن صندوق اس تي في عن توقيع شراكة مع شركة ميتا تهدف إلى دعم الشركات التقنية الناشئة، تحديدا في منطقة الشرق الأوسط وشمال أفريقيا عامة، والمملكة العربية السعودية خاصة. هذا كله من خلال دعم نمو شركات محفظة اس تي في بحلول ميتا ومنصاتها أيضا. وقد صممت الشراكة وفقا للبيان لبناء القدرات التقنية في المملكة العربية السعودية من خلال تقديم التدريب ونقل المعرفة لرواد الأعمال والمسوقين والمطورين أيضا. ومن جهة أخرى تهدف هذه الشراكة إلى تمكين نمو شركات محفظة اس تي في من خلال تقديم الحوافز الاستراتيجية والمالية عبر منصة ميتا، وأيضا اللي بتشمل طبعا فيسبوك، انستغرام، واتساب وغيرها. عم نشوف دعم كبير بالفترة الأخيرة تحديدا من شركة ميتا للشركات الناشئة، وفي تركيز كبير أيضا على الشركات الناشئة في منطقتنا العربية. وما ننسى أنه حتى بفترة كورونا شركة ميتا كانت من الشركات اللي دعمت الشركات الناشئة حتى بحوافز مادية لحتى تدعمهم بالفترة الجائحة واللي عانى منها العديد من الشركات. أما إذا بدنا ننتقل إلى عالم السيارات، فخلونا نحكي عن شركة لوسيد. الآن عم تتلقى شركة لوسيد جروب تحديدا ما يصل إلى 3.4 مليار دولار من التمويل والحوافز على مدار 15 عاما المقبلة، كل هذا لمصنعها المخطط لإنشائه في المملكة العربية السعودية، واللي رح تبلغ طاقته الإنتاجية حوالي 155 ألف سيارة كهربائية سنويا. هذه الحوافز التمويلية اللي تم الكشف عنها بالتزامن مع توقيع اتفاقية إنشاء المصنع تؤكد الآمال الكبيرة المعقودة على هذا المشروع، حيث تخطط صانعة المركبات الكهربائية لوسيد ومقرها أيضا ولاية كاليفورنيا الأمريكية عن إطلاق منشأة الإنتاج الثانية على مستوى العالم والأولى خارج الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. مؤخرا التزمت المملكة العربية السعودية اللي بتمتلك غالبية أسهم لوسيد من خلال صندوق الاستثمارات العامة بشراء ما يصل إلى 100 ألف سيارة كهربائية من لوسيد على مدار 10 سنوات المقبلة. وهذا إن يدل على أنه المستقبل هو مستقبل السيارات الكهربائية، وفي دعم وتمويل كبير وضخ أموال كبيرة على هذا المجال. وطبعا العديد من الشركات والحكومات عم بيحكوا بملف الاستدامة اللي طبعا السيارات الكهربائية بتدعمه. أما عن آخر خبر معنا لليوم ننتقل إلى عالم الشركات الناشئة. أعلنت الآن بيمو الشركة التقنية المالية في منطقة الشرق الأوسط وشمال أفريقيا وباكستان، وبتتخذ من دولة الإمارات مقرا لها، عن إغلاق جولة استثمارية سيد قدرها 12 مليون دولار أمريكي، وإطلاق منصتها لإدارة الإنفاق لتمكين الشركات الصغيرة والمتوسطة في المنطقة بحلول سريعة مبسطة أيضا، تحديدا لسداد الفواتير وإدارة النفقات، بالإضافة أيضا إلى حلول البطاقات المؤسسية الذكية. وأسست بيمو على يد أيهم غوراني وفاليري وأليساندرو وأيضا سعيد غوراني اللي عملوا سابقا لدى شركتي جوجل وروكت إنترنت أيضا، وأسهموا مجتمعين وفقا لبيان الشركة خلال 15 عام الماضية بإطلاق أو تنمية عمليات أكثر من 8 شركات. ويعملون حاليا في بيمو جنبا إلى جنب مع فريق مؤسس يضم 20 عضوا، ويملكوا خبرات سابقة في العمل لدى شركات تقنية محلية وعالمية أيضا. تشير بيمو إلى بدءها باستقبال الدفعة الأولى من الشركات الإماراتية، حيث ستوفر لها مزايا بتتضمن الفواتير الرقمية، بالإضافة إلى ذلك عمليات الموافقة المؤتمتة، خاصية تسديد الفواتير بنقرة واحدة، وإمكانية مراقبة التدفقات النقدية في الوقت الفعلي، فيما ستوفر أيضا للعملاء قريبا فرصة الاستفادة من البطاقات المادية والافتراضية أيضا مسبقة الدفع اللي يمكن شحن شحنها برصيد وتوزيعها على الموظفين أيضا، مما رح يتيح إمكانية التصنيف التلقائي لنفقات الموظفين، وأيضا تسجيل الإيصالات الخاصة بجميع العمليات، بالإضافة إلى تقديم شفافية كاملة حول النفقات المؤسسية لأصحاب الشركات والفرق الإدارية. أيضا عم نشوف تركيز كبير على شركات الفنتك في مجال الستارت ابس والشركات الناشئة في منطقتنا العربية. والسبب بهذا الموضوع أنه فعلا بمنطقتنا العربية نحن بنحتاج إلى وعي مالي أكبر، وأيضا نشر الوعي المالي بشكل كبير، وتحديدا للفئة الجديدة وفئة الشباب. عم نشوف في تركيز كبير عليه، ولذلك العديد من الشركات المتعلقة في عالم الفنتك عم تحصل على تمويل بالفترة الأخيرة، لأنه المستثمرين عم يؤمنوا بقدراتهم، وأيضا أنه هذا هو المستقبل. هذه كانت كل أخبارنا الصباحية لليوم. بعد الفاصل رح أترككم مع زميلي شهير الكندي ومقابلة اليوم للحديث عن شركة فلاشي. خليكم معنا ولا تروحوا لبعيد.
And we're back on Tech بالعربي. I'm Shahir and we're joined by Miles Rothwell, Head of Commercial at Flashy. Miles, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's all ours. How are you feeling today?
Feeling great, I'm really excited to come and talk to you about Flashy.
Thank you for coming in. So before we get started, can you give us a brief overview over what you guys do at Flashy?
Of course. So essentially what Flashy is we're a commercial photography platform. Now that sounds a little bit boring, but what we really do is we enable businesses to find scalable, professional content. We make it easy for them. We have a platform where they can make all their bookings and they can track the content being produced and also pay for it. And we also work with some of the very best content producers in the region.
So do you provide the photographers, locations, bookings, of course?
Mm-hmm.
So the entire team's covered, essentially.
Yeah, it's as simple as 5 clicks of the mouse for one of our business clients to book a shoot. We only work with vetted photographers. So I guess some of the key pillars that our business is built on is first is accessibility. We know that businesses, whether they're large multinationals, even governments, they're all using content daily, all the way through to an entrepreneur who might have an online store and maybe use Instagram or something to sell their products. They're all using content, and in the past, it's been quite difficult for businesses to find someone to produce that content. And I guess the challenges that they faced is consistency being one.
100%.
And consistency, I think, is what most big businesses want. They want to know that when they're bringing someone on board to shoot content, that they're going to get the same results each and every time. Fits in with their brand guidelines. And the other angle is speed. What we like to do is work within very strict SLAs. We want to produce this content quick. We don't want our customers waiting, a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks for this content to be produced. And what we're finding now is speed is really critical.
Can you talk or elaborate a bit more on speed?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the turnaround period for a general photo shoot, and how important is it in general for the turnaround, essentially?
So I would say in terms of our business, it's probably the most important, if not around the most important factor. So we operate with very strict SLAs, as I mentioned. Usually, if we take as an example, let's take a real estate shoot. A real estate agent wants us to come in and shoot their villa. Yeah. What's important to them is that they can get that content online on the property portals, on their social media, as quickly as possible, so they can get the property sold, they can get the property rented. So for real estate, we operate 24 to 48 hours. In fact, for all content, whether it's F&B, whether it's an event, any sort of photography, 24 to 48 hours.
And it generally does take a while because of touching up, brushing up, and just going over essentially every piece of detail. People don't necessarily acknowledge the behind the scenes that goes into creating the perfect picture. Can you talk a bit on that?
Yeah, of course. So we're quite lucky that the 2 co-founders of the business both have photography backgrounds and both have tech backgrounds as well. And one of the key problems that we've solved is post-production. As you said, touching up of images, making sure the editing is done within a company's brand guidelines. We're lucky we've got a platform that does 90% of that work for us. So that enables the quick turnaround time. And our editing is all centralized in Dubai here. Amazing. So we have a small editing team to do the final 10%, to do the human check, which is really important.
Can you tell us a bit on the role of technology and how does that play into your business model?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's the backbone. It's the engine of our business. Without the tech that's there to enable the speed, we'd be doing the same thing as what businesses have been doing for the last 15 years.
And can you talk about the difference between how it was traditionally approached and the accessibility that they now have?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, historically what would happen is a photographer would go out for a photo shoot. They would then also be tasked with editing the images themselves. Now, if they're busy and they're doing multiple shoots in a day, that editing is going to be delayed.
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to have to use other software to do that editing. They're going to have to do revisions because the customer is going to come back and say, oh, change this, change this. This is all using the photographer's time up.
Exactly.
Where with us, we can basically program our tech to edit the images exactly how the company wants. And then, as I said, the human check. But yeah, 24, 48 hours. We normally have to do maybe one revision, and that's for the first shoot. Second, third, fourth, we know what they need.
How important is quality in the industry? Because from a creator's point of view, you look over all the minute details that the client won't necessarily pay attention to or acknowledge that those are important. How do you find the balance between the two?
Yeah, it's really interesting because sometimes even the customers, they don't know exactly what they want. So they'll come to us for guidance. They'll say, oh, what if we change the exposure here? What if we did some color balancing here? And it's up to us to really guide them on what we think should be done to that content to really make it stand out. At the end of the day, everyone wants to stand out with their content.
Exactly. And it's hard differentiating and creating content that isn't or hasn't been done before.
Exactly.
So how do you, do you guys create a mood board for the clients beforehand and just help portray their vision in the best way possible? Yeah,
so it obviously depends on the vertical. So the verticals that we focus on, what we think are standardizable, and they are real estate for one, product for another, events for another, F&B, hospitality. So what we feel is when we send a photographer to those shoots, that we can guide the photographer. These are the deliverables that we think the client would want. Yeah. We obviously agree with the client beforehand what sort of mood they're looking for, what sort of editing they're looking for, if there's any particular shots that they're looking for. So we can guide the photographer to do that. But yeah, making sure our customers are up to date with how we are producing the content is really important. It's a communication which is key.
Do you notice any trends over the years, especially in how people approach photography? And if so, do you feel like you have to join the bandwagon and do what people are doing?
I think if we, photographers and content producers these days are kind of the rock stars, right?
100%.
Content is cool. And if you look at where it's come, even post 2020, when we were all stuck inside of our houses for a little bit, historically people were going to the supermarket. Now they're looking at food delivery aggregators. And if I'm going to order my lunch on a delivery aggregator, it's highly unlikely I'm going to click on a meal that doesn't have a picture next to it.
That is so true. Also, it depends on how the picture looks. If it doesn't necessarily look appealing, I'm not going to order it.
Exactly, and it makes a huge difference for sales.
Definitely.
F&B, I think, is one where there is a direct correlation between sales and the quality of the content. Real estate, again, if you showcase a property and it looks, and we can do with post-production so that it looks similar to how I'd be viewing it with my own eyes, that's the sort of stuff that sells.
Exactly, and some people sell properties with photos that were just taken on their iPhone, and you won't even click on it. It's the same with actual physical restaurant menus. You wouldn't necessarily want to touch it. Not touch it, but you wouldn't know how to approach it, essentially. And with the different things on the menu and 3 pictures that are visible, you don't know. You're not necessarily attracted to anything on it.
Exactly.
You were talking a bit on the turnaround period for photographers and going back and forth with the clients and retouching and everything. Besides that, what would you say are some of the challenges in the industry as a whole and for photographers?
Yeah, so the photographer component of our business is huge. What we like to think of Flashy is having 2 customers, really. We've got the businesses that we provide the content for. We've also got the photographers that we work with. Those photographers see Flashy as a bit of a community. It's a bit of a place where they can potentially do shoots for businesses that they would have never been able to do a shoot for. Again, because the business maybe wouldn't have been able to find them. the photographer probably couldn't advertise themselves somewhere where they could get the business. So we see ourselves as kind of the intermediary between some really talented photographers and some businesses that are really hungry for the best content possible.
So it's not necessarily in-house photographers all the time. You also give any photographers the exposure that they need?
Yeah, so predominantly our business model is built around working with freelance photographers.
Okay.
So what we do is we vet every single one. We've got about a 7% success rate from application to onboarding of a photographer. That's because we stand by the content they produce. Yeah. And it's really important when we're going out and speaking to a multinational hotel chain and they've got an event coming up, and that event needs to be captured so it can be circulated on their socials, in their advertising at a global scale. It's really important that we can tell them, we're sending you the best of the best. And in order to be able to say that, we need to make sure they are the best of the best.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, the onboarding and the vetting side is really key for us.
I have a question in general about production shoots, right? Mm-hmm. So if it's not necessarily in-house and it's on location, mm-hmm. or an Airbnb, mm-hmm. or any general place that isn't necessarily in-house, mm-hmm. in my prior job, one of the biggest things we'd face, and it was editorial essentially. Okay. So it's product shoots, location shoots with models. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest challenges we'd face is when it's a location shoot, we wouldn't necessarily know what all the requirements are, mm-hmm. whether it's permits or having everyone from the other side be informed. Mm-hmm. Do you guys go through all that? Yeah, look, and that's a really important part of our communication with the customer prior to the shoot taking place. So because we work with freelance photographers, their time is important to them. And normally, they work on an hourly rate with their customers. If we've got a photographer showing up to a shoot that isn't briefed correctly, or they're having to sit there and waste time, it's inefficient for our business. So one of the key parts of Flashy is the communication, working out exactly what the brief is. We have to understand what the brief is. We have to understand exactly what's required so that we can then pass that information on to the photographer, who will bring their own equipment. So we don't supply any equipment. Photographers, as I'm sure you know, they've got their preferred equipment that they like to use, that they know and they trust. So you provide all that?
No. So they provide everything. Okay. However, if there is ever such things as lighting or ancillary type products that needed for the shoot, then we can supply that as well.
And if those things aren't necessarily provided, it delays everything for everyone. Mm-hmm. It delays what the client wants. It delays the time of the photographer, the time of the talent, the time of everyone that's involved in either a product shoot or in hospitality or in real estate. Mm-hmm. So that is one big disadvantage of not necessarily knowing what is required and not understanding the brief.
Yeah, we have to be efficient. Like any tech company, efficiency is key, and we're really trying to solve that efficiency problem, the efficiency of creating content. I think that as we progress as a business, we learn as well, which is important for any startup.
Exactly.
No two shoots are the same. No customers' requirements are exactly the same. And it's on us as a business to make sure that we can deliver what they need every single time.
Exactly. So within the last year, the business has skyrocketed significantly. What elements do you think have played into it? Yeah,
look, I think the first thing is really identifying the verticals that really need our assistance most. And as I mentioned before, the 4 key verticals are what we've identified. There's a big educational piece here as well, because historically, these companies have had in-house teams. And they've been paying out the salaries to have someone there being able to produce their content all the time. Or they have rolled the dice and gone with a freelancer that hasn't been vetted, that maybe has been given on the advice of a friend or a family member, and then the shoot hasn't worked out. Yeah. So I think that part of what's really helped our growth is understanding what are their pain points, and then applying our product, our business, to solve those pain points. And the only way has been to do that is look at, really understand what they're using the content for, how they're currently doing it, what's their pain points with that, and what we can do, what tweaks we can make to kind of ease that. All
right, perfect. So you've also recently expanded to Saudi Arabia. Why was that the right decision? Why Saudi out of everywhere else in the MENA region?
Yeah, well, I mean, Vision 2030, it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Like what they are doing on such a large scale. I mean, creating cities brick by brick is something that you don't see in the world often.
Exactly.
And at the start point of all of that is content. When they are positioning these mega cities, and I saw a piece of content for Neom where they're building basically a mountain with snow that you can ski down. Selling that vision is what content is used for. I mean, content is key to maybe get the investment into the real estate, to get the construction going. And yeah, I think the future for KSA with the tourism aspirations that they have, to get those aspirations to become a reality, the content has to be on point.
Agreed, 100%. How different would you say the industry is in the UAE in comparison to Saudi?
Oh, there's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot of similarities that I really like. Similar to the UAE, a lot of business is done face to face. You know, people want to meet each other, and you know, I think the UAE and KSA they look at each other and they take what's worked and maybe what hasn't and learn from it and grow. So I think that a lot of the conversations that we have had in the UAE in the early days, it really helps us to go into the KSA market and say, hey, we've learnt that from what we've done in Dubai and Abu Dhabi in the UAE.
So you have a blueprint, essentially.
We have a blueprint, and we already know, problems are not geographical. The problems that a lot of content-heavy businesses have in the UAE, they're exactly the same problems that a lot of content-heavy businesses have in KSA. So yeah, the conversations can be quite similar. But yeah, I'm really excited to see Vision 2030 come to fruition and the role that content plays in it.
Do you think the problems are being faced as global, or is it regional?
Look, I think it's global. And you know, the benefit of our business and what makes it really exciting is we can cross border very easily. We centralize the post-production, which means that we have greater control over it, and it really helps with the speed element. But in terms of geographical locations where we can do photo shoots, yeah, the world is our oyster at this point. If we get a phone call from somebody in the US and say they need a photographer to do a shoot in 48 hours, we can make that happen.
We got you covered.
Yeah. So geographical, I think, yeah, the problems are similar. And, you know, the benefit, yeah, for our business is we can cross border very easily.
Yeah. So by the end of the year, you aim to become, and you're very close to, becoming the go-to photography agency in the region, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite lucky because we're essentially, you know, we've got the first mover advantage in the region. There is no one else in the region doing what we're doing at the moment. So yeah, going international and going GCC, North Africa into Europe, and aggressively into Southeast Asia, yeah, it's all very exciting, and there's no reason why we see from looking at these markets why we wouldn't be used.
How do you differentiate yourselves from the competition?
Yeah, so I think you know, us being physically present in the Middle East is one key thing, and a lot of customers who have used businesses of similar nature that are internationally located, one of their big struggles has been communication. These other businesses haven't understood how the region works. If you take real estate as an example, you know, getting access to buildings, it takes some knowledge of the region to be able to get access, to know that you need to get permission from the developers, etc., etc. If I'm sitting in my office in France, I'm not going to have a clue how to handle that situation. So I think us being in the Middle East and located here is one key factor. The other differentiation that we have at currently is we are very flexible. As a startup, we have to be. So we really take the client's requirements and we make sure that we can deliver on those requirements. And I think with every startup, that's how you scale. You scale by getting close to your customers, building their trust, showing them you're the right partner.
We can do what you want.
Yeah, we can do what you want. And then that should mean the start point of long-term business.
Do you think visibility also is a factor?
Yeah, I think visibility is key. I mean, we have to make sure that our own content is good. If we're helping a lot of businesses with content, we also have to be at the top of our game. And marketing our business, whether it's
I was going to ask on that.
Yeah, whether it's through Google or stations like Smashy, these types of things are key. We're in the content game, and we're talking about content while you're producing content. I think it's awesome.
Inception, essentially.
Yeah, a little bit.
Can we talk about the funding that you've received recently? A, congrats.
Thank you.
And B, what do you aim to do with it?
Sure. So yeah, we've just we closed pre-seed round earlier this year. We've luckily, had a really good venture capital partner so far called TA Ventures, which is headquartered in Kiev in Ukraine. And in addition to some friends and family and some angel, we raised $400,000 US in pre-seed, and that's really helped us get to this point. But yeah, the next goal is a seed round, which we're hoping to close in the next couple of months at around the $2 million US mark. But yeah, it really, having a pre-seed round like that, and especially having a venture capital firm that participated in that pre-seed round, it really gives us confidence that we're on the right track.
Amazing. Well, Mas, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Guys, that's it from us. One more day tomorrow on the show, and then it's a weekend. So stay tuned. You're back with Hala tomorrow, and goodbye from me.